And then I listened to the dance versions, and they were different again because
Oh,
this is like 25 years later, 26 years later.
yeah.
So what I've done is like a sort of greatest hits of his bass lines from all his eras, his early era, the 1980 to 97, and up to what was the original copy.
Rob Mail is a bass player in the UK theatre show, the Fleetwood Mac Songbook. Rob is a bass player and guitarist with a career spanning recording and touring with original as well as tribute bands. Welcome, Rob.
Thank you, Stephen. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
It's fantastic to have you on, man. Thank you so much. You've just come from, it's in January here in the UK. It's freezing cold outside. You've just come
It
from
certainly
two
is.
sellout gigs. Is that right?
Yes, indeed. And I'm literally still a bit blurry eyed, I'll be honest with you. So I don't normally have these bags, honestly. But yeah, we had two great gigs the last couple of nights. Sort of locally to me in the southwest, we play all over the country. And even up in Scotland, and we're in Ipswich next week, for example, your neck of the woods, I believe. Um, but these two were, one was in Lyme Regis and one was in Exmouth. So from our point of view, that was quite local for me. So, but yeah, I'm still tired.
There you
But
go.
they were great gigs. They were sold out, like you say. It's all
Fantastic.
good.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us
My
today.
pleasure.
Let's begin talking about the Fleetwood Mac Songbook. You joined in this touring theatre company fairly recently. Can you tell us about how you came to join?
Well, I joined officially in July of last year, but I've been a fan of the band or a follower of the band since 2021. So it was nearly 4 years now. And I discovered them by accident. A band I was in at the time were looking for a female vocalist, and one of the prospective vocalists sent in some videos of her singing in the Fleetwood Mac Songbook. She'd left the band since, and she was looking for a new project. And I watched the videos, and I thought, "Oh, this is a great band," and I just thought I'd love to be in that band one day. That's the perfect gig for me because I love John McVie, he's one of my biggest influences, and I love Fleetwood Mac. And it just and most of the guys were based in the southwest, and I thought, oh, so it's not too far away for rehearsals, etc., etc. And then things didn't work out with that girl. But I stayed in touch with the band and sort of became like a stalker on Facebook and Instagram. Became a top fan, the top fan, and I actually went to see them 2022, 2023. I went to see them in concert up in Burnham on Sea, just up the road from
Yeah.
me. Yeah, I'm in Taunton, in Somerset, and they were fantastic. And I wanted to join them even more when I saw them live. And I even met a couple of them, and it was great, and we got on really well. And basically, long story short, middle of last year, they had a bit of a lineup change. And needed a new bass player. And thankfully for me, they thought, hang on, there's that weird stalking guy on Facebook. Hang on, let's give him a call and see if he's up for it. And I was like, hey, at last. But yeah, it was cool. That was like a dream come true for me. So and I've been ever since. So we
Fantastic.
haven't done, I've only done, we had a bit of time off during the summer to rehearse and get a new lineup together and stuff. So we've only been active really since I think it was September or October. We did a festival actually in August, beg your pardon. And I did a couple of festivals actually, thinking about it. One at the end of July. I think I've been in the band about 3 weeks or something. And then we did a couple of festivals. Then we took a break and got more stabilized and did a bit of rehearsing, and then started in September, I think it was, regularly gigging, and now we're booked up for the rest of the year, pretty much, every week. So it's good. It's going to be busy. It's going to be a busy, exciting year.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So you got the gig, right? I guess you did the audition, you got the gig,
Yeah.
and just give us a sense of how you set about getting into all those songs. Great, iconic bass lines, but they got to be right. So,
Yeah,
luckily, there's a lot of resource out there, isn't there, on
yeah.
YouTube on this. So, tell us a little bit about that, how that process worked.
The process for me personally is, I mean, some of the songs I sort of knew already. I mean, I knew all the songs to listen to,
Yeah.
but I've played a few of the tunes in previous cover bands. So I had a sort of a bit of a head start on two or three of the numbers. The rest of the stuff, my process is I tend to listen to the songs usually on Spotify. That's usually the easiest, accessible way of listening to stuff. I've got the stuff on CD and vinyl. Like I said, I'm a huge Mac fan. Um, but having it on Spotify, you're sat at the computer, it's just easier to work at. So I listen to it by ear. That's what I tend to do. After many years of experience, I've got to be able to, and playing in cover bands and as well as original bands, but especially cover bands when you've got to learn other people's stuff. I've developed an ear to listen to things and be able to pick it up pretty much, pretty well. Not 100% maybe. So, but I like to do it by ear because then it sort of feels more natural. And then if I'm stuck, if there's a bit I just can't work out, or I'm not hearing it, if it's a sharp or a flat or a natural, then I might go to YouTube, and like you said, 9 times out of 10, there's some 10 guys doing videos, and they're all different. They all play the bass lines differently in different positions or even different notes, some of them. So, it's a bit of both. 95% is just me listening to it. 5% is the extra little bit for the complicated bits or the bits I can't quite work out because there's too much going on in the mix or what have you. And some of the Fleetwood Mac recordings, the bass isn't that well, it's not really up front. I found some of the
Okay.
earlier
Yeah.
Lindsey Buckingham era stuff that you couldn't really hear the bass in the mix.
Okay.
If they remixed it today, I'm sure they beef it up a little bit. So it's quite hard to hear some of the bass lines. But
Did just with those lines, did you find did he sort of when he played live? Did he play kind of like a record, or was it
oh no,
no?
oh no. This is the interesting thing,
Yeah.
Steve. Is that I started off by learning all the studio versions, and I mean the guys in the band told me, Lisa, the leader of the band, she told me we tend to use the live versions that they did from two sources. They did a live album in 1980, I think, from the Tusk tour. And they did a live album from that, and they used some of the versions that we use are from that album. Then in the 1990s, I think it was 97 or 98, they reformed with Lindsey Buckingham
Yes.
after he'd left in the 80s. And they did a tour called The Dance. You might have
Yes.
seen it on YouTube or on telly.
Yeah.
And it was televised. It's a great concert. So they used a mixture of both of those live versions. So, when I was learning the songs, I instantly went to the studio versions just to get the basics, and not realizing actually because I hadn't heard the live versions. I'd seen The Dance years ago, but I wasn't taking any notice back in those days. I didn't know I was going to join a Fleetwood Mac tribute band. So I sort of I did the studio versions, learned them pretty much note for note. I'm a stickler for detail and getting everything as authentic as possible, as many of my previous bandmates will attest to. So I discovered these live versions, and I was like, okay, I listened to the 1980 live album versions first, and they were completely different. Completely different. Again, not very audible. The bass lines still weren't that audible. It's quite rough. They're quite rough recordings, I think. And some of them were recorded at sound checks and at private functions, not just live concerts. So there's a bit of a mixture in quality, I found. So I found that the live versions are very different. He was doing, I mean, the whole band were doing different things. Lindsey Buckingham was extending solos and doing extending intros and things, which bands tend to do live, don't they? And John McVie was no exception. He just I don't know, he just seemed to go off. Obviously things like the chain, that iconic bass line at
Yeah.
the end. Having said that, even that, he changes the timing of it when
Oh,
he
really?
plays. And I thought, don't mess with that, mate. I mean, I know it's your bass line, but it's sacrilege still. But anyway, so even that proves it. Even the most iconic bass line he probably ever wrote, he still changed that slightly. So you can imagine what the rest of it was like. So, and then I listened to the dance versions, and they were different again because
Oh,
this is like 25 years later, 26 years later.
yeah.
So what I've done is like a sort of greatest hits of his bass lines from all his eras, his early era, the 1980 to 97, and up to the original copies. So I sort of try and honor what he's done in the past, and also try and stick a bit of myself in there as well to keep it fresh and fun for myself, and add a little flurry here and there, which no one's going to notice, but it just amuses me. you know. So yeah, back to your original point. He does very different things I'd imagine every gig probably just jams it, but there are certain parts which
Yeah.
he sort of sticks to almost like he did originally.
Fantastic, man. What great tunes. What great songs. So what are the ones you're sitting backstage, you're all set up, you've done a sound check, you're all dressed up, you're ready to go. What are the ones you're looking forward to? What are the ones you're thinking, I can't wait to get to that?
Well, for me personally, I've got several favorites. I mean, I really like You Make Loving Fun
Mm,
because it's got a real stomp. I like stomping bass sounds, really
yeah.
stomp, and the keyboards, the clavier is doing the funky stuff, and it's just a great tune, isn't it?
Yeah. It's great.
You can really sort of get your groove on with that one. And I also like Say You Love Me,
Oh, yes.
which is just a really, I mean, to me, the bass line is pivotal to that song. It drives the whole thing along, like a lot of his bass lines do. I mean, Dreams without the bass line wouldn't be Dreams, as simple as it is.
Yeah.
That's a classic bass line, just two notes pretty much all the way through. But without that bum, 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 that song wouldn't be half as powerful. Anyway, I'm digressing as I tend to do.
You're doing fun.
Um, and You Make Loving Fun, it's just got a really, the verses are quite simple. But you listen to the chorus, and he's not just playing the root notes. He does his own little melody, which is quite, it's quite tricky to play. But it's just so lovely. And at the end, he goes off into another tangent. So I enjoy those two. I enjoy them all, but those two are favorites. Also, Silver Springs,
Oh, yes.
which was not on the original Rumours album. You probably know the story. It
Yeah.
was it was left off because it was too long,
Yeah.
and Stevie Nicks got a bit upset about it because she really wanted it on. It was her song, and they put something else on instead. But it became a B-side, I think, of the first single. I forget which single was the first single, but it became a B-side. And then when they released or re-released the album in the 80s on CD,
Yeah.
they stuck it on the end of the actual album.
Yeah.
So people do sort of know it, but there are quite a few people that still don't know Silver Springs, and it's such a great song. And again, the bass, I mean, that's a prime example of his bass lines changing from studio to live. They're completely different. So I'd learned, and the studio version is really tricky. There's some weird stuff, and it's different every verse. And I painstakingly learned the studio version. Then I listened to the live version, and he wasn't doing any of that. It's like I thought, great, even John McVie doesn't do what he wrote on the studio. So why am I worried? So again, I've taken bits from both because they were both great in their own way. They were just different. And there's a bass line at the end during the chorus, as you'd call it, which is just sublime. It's a pumping sort of rolling bass line, and I just love playing that part. So that's a real highlight for me. But we do the Peter Green stuff as well, and
Okay.
that's fun. I mean, that's a different feel than the Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks era. Those are always great. I mean, I love, like I said, I'm a huge Fleetwood Mac fan. There's nothing in the set I don't like, and there's other songs that we don't do that I'd love to do, and I'm sure at some point we will do because the band change the setup. Most years, they'll spend a couple of weeks getting some new songs in the set. We haven't done this year because normally they don't gig in January, but this year we're gigging through January.
Nice.
So we haven't had time to change it up yet, but we probably will add one or two at some point. But there's so much to choose from. It's like it has an overload of songs to choose from. What a catalogue! It's amazing. Very few
Abs-
bands have got that sort of catalogue with those great songs in it.
Yeah, just so many songs and so much and all the instruments are really playing melodic parts, aren't they?
Oh
So
yeah,
some of those bass lines are
yeah.
really melodic as well, aren't
Oh,
they?
absolutely. Which is what I like. I'm a melodic bass player. I mean,
Yeah,
McCartney, probably my favorite bassist. You don't get much more melodic than that.
for
John
sure.
D. Nick Seymour from Crowded House,
Yeah.
very underrated player. Just listen to his bass line. Colin Moulding from XTC, a bit more obscure, but again, you listen to the
Oh
bass
yes.
lines in XTC, unbelievable. So very melodic. I'm a melody guy. I write songs and I like melodies. So, and that transfers into my bass playing as well. I like to play melodically. So it's all good. So this suits me down to the ground because it couldn't get much more melodic than this.
Fantastic. And we'll talk a little bit about the songwriting and the original music in just a second.
Yeah.
So you got the gig and just let's talk a little bit about your rig then. So did you change it to join this
Um,
group or was it the
Slightly,
same?
slightly. I mean, I'm using the same bass. I use a Fender American Deluxe
Nice.
jazz bass
Nice.
as my main bass. I've got a Rickenbacker 4003 as well, which I don't. It's a backup at the moment. It's a lovely guitar to have as a backup. Believe me, it's a beautiful bass. It's just behind me over here. Um, but I don't tend. I feel more comfortable on the jazz. The Ricky's quite a beast to play. It's quite
Okay.
the neck's chunky on it, and I've got quite
Okay.
small hands, so I struggle with it to play. But it's a lovely, lovely bass. But the jazz is just so lovely to play. It's got a really thin neck, and it's this particular one I've got. It's not an old one. I think it's 10, 12 years old maybe. I bought it secondhand. And it's just a lovely guitar to play, and it does everything. It stays in tune. It's you barely have to tune it between gigs, let alone during the gig. It's fantastic. So that's a lovely bass. And I've got a couple of other basses, some cheaper ones as well, just to muck around on. But the Fender Jazz is my main one, and I love that very much. I'd love to get what. Sorry, going off on a tangent again, Steve. I would love to get, if anybody wants to sell me one. I want to get a Fender Precision. I've never really played a Precision. I've been more of a jazz bass guy.
Okay.
You tend to be jazz or Precision, if you're a Fender guy. Very rarely both. And I've always been leaning towards the jazz side of things. But I'd like to get a Precision because John McVie, especially in the 70s, and actually beyond that into the 90s and beyond, he used precision basses,
Okay.
not just Fender, but Lackland and different boutique makers as well. But they were precision shaped,
Yeah.
and he used to use like a natural coloured one. Um, so I'd love to get one of those just to sort of fit the image, the look. He did
Nice.
play a jazz bass very similar to mine back in the 60s
Okay.
during the Peter Green era. So it has got historical significance, especially when we're doing the Peter Green stuff. It's perfect for that. But for the rest of it, I'd love to be more authentic and have a precision, a natural coloured precision, or an alembic. If anybody wants to lend me 10 grand to buy one, because you used to use those in the 70s a lot.
Wow.
Very nice basses, but beyond my current price range, I'm afraid.
That's a
Um,
lot.
but yeah, sorry, back to your original point, Steve. So the bass stayed the same. The amp has stayed the same. I use an orange OB1 500,
Okay.
which is rack mounted. And it's just a really, really reliable, nice, powerful sounding analog amp. It's not a tube amp or anything.
No.
It's not tube. I don't know what you call it. Analog, digital, I don't know. So that's been great. And when I was playing in other bands, I've been using orange cabinets with them. I got a 1 by 15 and I got a 210 cabinet, which stack up.
Okay.
And I use either or both depending on the size of the gig. And that's been great and that works really well. But with the Fleetwood Mac Songbook, everything is in ear.
Yes.
We're using in-ear systems, so everything apart from the drums is quiet on the stage. So we've got a quiet stage, which
Nice.
I've never done before. So that was I've dabbled in a couple of projects, but never as a full-time thing. And I've always borrowed in-ear gear. So I had to buy my own in-ear gear to when I joined the band, and it's been brilliant. It's
Nice.
really I've got an LD systems.
Nice.
Wireless transmitter and etc. And some BASIN or BASN, I don't know how you pronounce it, in-ear monitors. And I'm really happy with it. And I've had no issues. I had a few teething problems in the first rehearsal. But how does this work? What are we going to do? How do I connect to the sound desk and all this sort of stuff? But it's been great, and it's lovely to be able to hear yourself and not get deafened. And
Yes.
so it's a game changer. And the band have been using in-ears, I think, for 2 or 3 years. And
Yeah.
they found it an absolute game changer. And it really is, I recommend it to anybody if you've got the facilities to do that. It's a great thing to do, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So yeah, the LD systems. The amp is DI'd, by the way, because I don't use the
So nice.
cabinets.
Okay.
So it goes straight into a Soundcraft UI24 mixing console.
Okay.
As does the LD systems, and we just hand the what do they call it? There's a word for it with all the wires. We hand that to the mixing guy desk. Everything's labeled. He just plugs it in,
Nice.
and it's like job's a good one, and
Nice.
we are a sound guy's dream. And we've been told that by several sound guys. It's like, oh wow, I wish everyone could be like this. It's so easy, just turn up. We just hand them the feed and they just plug it into their end and we're away. No monitors. We do our own mixes on our little iPads and phones and what have you. And it's fantastic. It's a real. I didn't think I'd take to it like I did, but it's brilliant. It's really, really good.
Fantastic.
So yeah, that's about it. I use a pedal board. It's a Boss pedal board. It's actually a guitar pedal board, which I had for my guitar projects, but it works with bass. I only use it at the moment for two reasons: for the tuner, which is handy to have on the floor. Do some stuff. I don't really like the headstock tuner thing.
No.
I'm not a big fan of that. They're not as accurate, I don't think, and they look a bit silly at the end.
Yeah.
But I like to have a floor tuner, so that the Boss pedal board provides me with an accurate floor tuner, which is great. I can do silent tuning if I need to between songs, and even if I don't, I like to check every now and again just to be sure. And I'm always turning around and smacking my head on the mic. There's mic in the drums or something, So I think, I better check. I've done it. So, and also I use it as a backup in case the amp goes down.
Right.
You have a direct feed out of the pedal board. It's got amp simulations in it.
Yes.
So it's just a backup.
Yeah.
It's not really doing a lot, like I say, apart from tuning, to be honest with you. So that's it. That's my setup.
Nice. Excellent. Thank you. So just tell us a little bit about, because you guys are, so situationally wise, for a theatre company, you're quite far away from quite a lot of the theatres. So how are you finding it with the sort of traveling and driving up and down?
Yeah, well, that's the downside, isn't it? If we could just step into a portal and arrive at the gig, wouldn't that be amazing? I'm sure in the future they'll do that. Touring will be so much easier. But yeah, I mean, what can you say? You got to do it. I mean, especially in the Southwest. I mean, a lot of the theatres we play are Midlands. In the east side of the country. We're even in Scotland in April. And that's going to be an interesting journey. We do a lot of stuff in the Southwest. We played at Penzance before Christmas, and like I said, this weekend, Lyme Regis, Exmouth. We got Sidmouth, I think. We do some stuff along the south coast in Wales, playing Cardiff. So they're all spread around. I mean, that's the thing. If you're a touring band and you want to do it as a living, then you've got to go to the place. They're not going to come to you, Steve, are they? At the end of the
That's
day.
true.
But traveling, it's a necessary evil, I guess. You've got to do it. I'm blessed in that Percy, who you interviewed the other week,
I did.
really lovely chap.
Love.
He told me to say that, by the way. No, I'm kidding. He's brilliant. He lives sort of in Devon, South Devon. I'm in Taunton in Somerset,
Okay.
so I'm sort of just off the M5, handily. And
Nice.
bless him, he for most of the gigs up country, he picks me up
Ah.
and I sort of just keep him awake by talking non-stop to him, as you can probably tell. I'm quite good. And and so he takes all the strain of the driving. I just buy him a coffee to keep him awake now and again, and and have a chat. And it's lovely because we become really really good friends, and it's just nice to have that closeness of a band member. So it's not, I'm not having to do the driving. I did drive to the last couple of gigs, which were down towards his way actually, so which is fine, and I'm happy to do it if necessary. But it's nice to have some company and not to have the worry and the stress of driving. I'll leave all that to Percy because he's the man.
Fantastic. Let's talk a little bit about some of the original stuff that you've done. And I think that's mostly on guitar from
Yes,
previous
yeah,
years.
yeah. I mean, my original stuff, I've always written since I started playing guitar at 13 or something. I've always liked writing songs. I thought that's what you did. I didn't think you played an instrument, you wrote a song. So I didn't really question it. So I've got a little bit better at it over the years, I think, I hope. I don't know. I'm sure somebody will tell me if I haven't. But yeah, I mean, I started off by playing guitar, Steve. That's the thing. When I was 13, I picked up the guitar. I was a guitarist for 30 years before I touched a bass. I mean, I did dabble, most guitarists have got a bass they can pick up
Yeah.
and record with,
Yeah.
and I did that, just doing some very rudimentary stuff. But, picking up a bass as a guitarist and being a bassist, as any bassist will tell you, is a completely different thing. And a lot
Yeah.
of bassists were guitarists and they turned to the dark side, Um, but I know quite a few of my good friends have been bassists from day one,
Yeah.
and that's fantastic. They got like a 30-year head start on me. I'm never going to catch him up, to be honest with you. But you know, uh, so most of my original stuff was back when I was still playing guitar. I've done a couple of things. I'm still working on original material now,
Nice.
and I'm a bit more adept. Whereas I used to like hire a bassist to come and play on my original stuff. I can now hopefully do a decent enough job myself. So I saved myself a few quid
Nice.
there. But yeah, it's my main original thing was back in the 90s. That's going back a few years now. Seems like yesterday, but it wasn't, unfortunately. I had a band called Paramore, which was my own band, and of course there was a famous band called Paramore later on, about 10 years later. But that
Oh.
wasn't me. Is the right name, different spelling as it happens,
Yeah.
American spelling.
Yeah.
But it was the wrong band. They got famous. Oh.
No.
But yeah, but we it was all my material. I'd spent years writing this material and collecting the material, and I got a band. I put my own band together. It took me about 5 years to find the right people for the band. By which time the music scene had changed, and we were old hat really. But we did okay for a couple of years, and played in London and Birmingham, and did some good shows, and played some Radio One road shows. Do you remember those
I,
things?
I did.
Yeah, played on the beach in Weston and
Nice.
Key and Woolacombe Bay, I think, back in '93. That was played with the likes of Orchestral Manoeuvres and
Nice.
Piece of Bass, E17,
Wow. Nice.
and Kim Wilde, Rick Astley.
Yeah. There you go.
Most importantly, Bjorn Again. Do you remember them?
Of
One of the
course.
original, one of the original tribute bands.
They were.
I don't think there was many before them, as far as I'm aware. They
No.
started going, didn't they?
Yeah.
They were great, from
Yeah.
Australia, as it happens. They're really nice guys. Anyway, so yeah, so I tend to, when I'm doing an original thing, I tend to play guitar,
Yeah.
simply because it's easier to show people. the chords and how the song goes. If I can strum something, it's difficult to show someone how a song goes on the bass. It's I've tried, and it's very difficult. So I tend to stick to the guitar. But at the moment, my original stuff, although I'm writing and hoping to do some recording this year, that's one
Nice.
of my hopes for this year. I'd like to get an album out with just me doing stuff, just to have a record of it, nothing else. So I'm hoping that I can do that. Percy said he might help me out with some keys because I'm not very good on the keys, but everything else I'm hoping to sort of cover myself. But I love writing. I
Nice.
write every day and sometimes every night. I wake up in the middle of the night for a pee. I'll have an idea in my head.
Nice.
Yeah. Oh, it drives me nuts. It does. Well, usually I wake up and I think of this. I'll have something in my head, or I think of an idea, and I'll think, oh, will I remember it in the morning? Oh, or should I get out into the cold room and record it on my phone? And usually I make myself get up and record it because it's never going to be there in the morning. So, and then you listen to it in the morning, you think, what a load of rubbish that was.
Oh,
Why did I
no.
just get in bed?
I had a great fun listening to. So, is it last year you recorded with Jules, Reason and the Fire?
It was Reason the Fire. Yes, it was. It sort of came out last year.
Okay,
It took us about 18 months to actually record it. So it started in 2022.
okay,
Most of the recording was done in 2023 during the
okay.
summer, just bits and pieces. We used a main studio. It was actually a private studio on the edge of Exmoor, beautiful studio, like a residential studio. And we did the bulk of the recording. We did all the drums there. And pretty much everything else was done in various people's houses or basements and play, like a lot of people do nowadays. They record at home, don't they? But we used a big live room for the drums
Nice.
because it's blues rock. You need
It
that
is.
drum sound. And well, we still have got a great drummer called Simon Pembry, great guy, great drummer, and he just nailed it. In
Yeah.
about a few hours really. It was fantastic, and we just laid everything else on top. But yes, that came out in March last year, and had a really great reception. And I'm glad you're enjoying listening to it. Thank you.
It's really good stuff. It's rocking stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed that. Excellent, Rob.
yeah,
So fantastic. So you guys got a big, busy year coming up
yeah.
with the Fleetwood Mac Songbook. You mentioned already you're going to go to, is it Scotland? You're all over the country.
Yeah, we're in Scotland in April. Greenock, I think the place is called.
Oh, I think I played there once.
Play
Quite a
there
long
as
way to
well.
get there.
You can give me some directions later or something. Yeah, so yeah, that's as far as we're going.
Okay.
We've got a few up north. We play Leeds, Stoke. I think
Yeah.
there's one up near Newcastle as well, around about. I think we're playing that one on the way up to Scotland.
Nice.
Just have something to do on the way up, really.
Good move.
Have a stopover, obviously, as well. But yeah, we're busy, busy, busy. We're booked up, like I say, throughout the whole year now. So it's going to be all systems go from now on.
And deservedly so. What a great show! I was very very happy and honoured to have Percy, your keyboard player, on the channel
Yeah,
just a couple of weeks ago, and it's been an absolute pleasure to have you, Rob. So you can catch up with the Fleetwood Mac Songbook on Instagram, on Facebook, and on fleetwoodmacsongbook.co.uk. Rob, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your experiences and your stories. It's been great to talk to you, man.
absolute pleasure, Stephen. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.